have to tell you that eTruck is not endorsed, sponsored, approved, or otherwise affiliated with FedEx Ground. All right, so we always look at the volume trends for lots of reasons, but now I think it's even more important to start looking real hard into what's going on with the volume. And there's some interesting things here. So let's look at the near term, we'll call them near term pickup trends. Pickup stops, when we show you pickup stops, we're showing you, well, we have all kinds of data, as most of you know, but in the case, when we look at these pickup stops, we look basically what's on the vans only. And if you look at what has happened here in the last couple, 3 weeks, there definitely now is a, albeit somewhat muted, there's definitely an increase in the number of pickup stops that's occurring. So it also has a, should equate also into pickup packages. But remember, these are on the vans. So definitely yesterday saw a pickup in both stops and packages. All right, so let's look a little deeper into the pickup side. If you look at pickup stops per dispatch, that didn't seem to, I mean, we had more pickup stops, but pickup stops per dispatch dropped actually pretty bad. And that's a function of, folks, we got too many, at least for now, we got too many dispatches out there. And then average stops for our client, this probably shows yesterday that some new or old customers are finally starting to come on board. Now, again, it's not a tidal wave yet, but at least it looks a little bit stronger. And there's something very interesting here. So if you look at pickup packages per pickup stop over the last several weeks, it's just not looking, the packages aren't there. The stops look like they're doing okay, but the packages aren't there. So it may be a few customers, or there may be a few more customers, but are they tendering packages yet? So yeah, think about it. Are folks sitting there thinking, well, I think I finally need an alternative to UPS. Who knows what might happen? So I'm going to start a FedEx account, or maybe I got this old FedEx account. I'm going to have them start stopping by, or whatever it is. But there doesn't appear to be, at least on the vans in this case, a lot of packages being picked up. Or are we seeing something else? So back for the first quarter, January, February, March, UPS released, they had during their earnings call, they released a whole bunch of information about what happened to them in the first quarter. And they were talking about the UPS package volume dropping as retail sales got soft. So is what we're seeing right now an acceleration of what started in the first quarter of this year? So if you look at some of the things they were talking about, they said slumping package volume triggered a decline in UPS revenue as the shipping service felt the effects of slowing retail spending. UPS said Tuesday, back in April, I think, UPS said Tuesday that its domestic package volume was down 5.4% in the first quarter compared with a year earlier, worse than Goldman Sachs' estimate of 3.3%. Customers displayed a pattern of trading down to cheaper options, Goldman analyst Jordan, whoever noted. They did? Okay. Overall revenue fell 6%, and the company projected full year revenue, okay. They were saying volume was higher than we expected in January. So January, they were doing okay. Close to our plan in February, and then moved significantly lower than our plan in March. As retail sales contracted, we saw a shift in consumer spending, Ms. Carroll said on the earnings call. So here's the thing about this. If they ended the quarter, the whole quarter,
Yeah, are you there? Uh-oh, we might have lost Jeff. But the focus here is, it looks like January closed to our plan, February significantly lower than planned, March retails contracted. So yeah, there is a contraction in volume in the UPS network. So what we're trying to say is, yeah, we've not seen a lot of volume come over from UPS, but maybe we have seen some volume come over from UPS, but just the overall market is soft right now. And July is typically the slowest month, just because shippers have people on vacation, as well as people are not ordering because they're on vacation. Colleges are out. So the students are home, so there's not as many packages going into the dorms there as well. Now that volume will come back, in August. So don't get lulled to sleep, I believe is what Jeff was going to say. And Jeff, it looks like you're back. Maybe not. Jeff, we can't hear you.
What,
There you go.
what I was going to say, there we go. Okay. What I was going to say is, if for the whole quarter, they were down 5.4%, that must have been one hell of a downturn in March. Because if they were above plan in January, at plan in February, then all of a sudden, whoops, we ended the quarter down 5.4%. So it must have been a pretty big drop. So their volume has been dropping before now, right? So important to think about that. FedEx's volume, we've been tracking for the whole year, been drifting, and I mean drifting north. But if FedEx or UPS's volume is going the other way, you are seeing people come over to FedEx. It's just you're not seeing a huge tidal wave, but you're at least not seeing the bottom fall out of the FedEx volume. It's important to keep in mind as we start talking about all these other things. So anyway. Then over on the delivery side of things, we're seeing not very much action here. In fact, this is interesting. The delivery stops, at least yesterday, were under anything that happened last week. That is strange. However, packages look a little better, but it was pretty flat anyway. So here's the thing. What could be going on here? This doesn't look like a huge tsunami of volume yet, for sure. But we're trying to say that probably the whole ocean is not really, the tide isn't really coming in. But what's really going on here? Looks like small shippers might be getting a little nervous. While you're seeing the pickup stops, at least on the vans, going up. Right? And it looks like large shippers are either suffering from a bad economy, which is what UPS is sort of trying to say is going on, or they don't want to or can't shift volume yet. So that's probably what's going on for now. All right. So as we always talk about productivity and efficiency, it's about to get tested. So if we look at yesterday, look at the number of routes dispatched. Whoops. If we look at the number of routes dispatched, it was up yesterday. So that's not so good. And of course, stops per dispatch were still way under the trend line. That's not good. But that results in your stops per dispatch being under 100. So, most of we preach this day and night, but here's where your biz will be made or broken depending on what happens in the next few weeks here. If you're not ready to handle more stops per dispatch, it'd be trouble. All right, so talk a little more specifically about the strike threat, and even more specifically, now we're in the danger zone now. So what's going to happen generally? What's going to happen over the next 3 weeks? So just keep in mind, and it might have happened while we're sitting here talking, at any point in time, there may magically be an agreement. So all the things that people do, all these articles being written, everything going on, all of a sudden, there could magically be some sort of agreement that gets put forward. So gotta watch and see if that can happen. But this week, as you're going to see, people are going to get more nervous. We're going to see a continued slow volume build. Looks like it started a little bit yesterday. We'll see what happens today. And then you're going to start seeing what's going to make people even more nervous is media folks, people that want to write about what's going on. They're going to start writing more and more things to get more and more clicks. And that just perpetuates the whole cycle as they write more and more doom and gloom. People click on it, and then they want to keep going. So at least this week, what we should see happening. Next week, though, FedEx is going to set a baseline and draw a line in the sand for new business, they say. Ken's probably going to talk about this a little more here in a little bit, but FedEx is going to next week say, look, if you're not on board by next week, that's it. You're not going to be able to get anything picked up if you're not there by now. But you know what? That they've said that already since March, so we'll see. But anyway, next week definitely volume will start to really accelerate. And then, as you know, as what happens with every peak, is operations that are somehow unprepared are going to start getting exposed. Of course, you don't want to be in that boat. Then it's the week after that, it's nothing still, it is resolved. And UPS is going to start, they've stated that they will this time around start purging their network, which means they could start doing this at any time, but it wouldn't probably make any sense until they got very close. They're going to just stop accepting pickups. And the reason is the last time there was a strike, so if they really think a strike is going to happen, or it's a really good possibility, you can't have packages that people need real bad stuck on a rail car someplace, or who knows where it is. You're going to have to purge the network, and it makes the eventual restart that much easier. You can't, if you've got to just pick up if you're cleaning up a mess, it's hard to clean up a mess. You can avoid the mess by purging the network. So, of course, if that starts happening, then that'll start getting folks that, for whatever reason, didn't try to move some volume over to FedEx. Then they'll start trying to push a bunch of volume over to FedEx, and then of course the FedEx network limits be pushed, and that's even without a strike yet. We're getting pretty close. So here's if something gets resolved in the next 3 weeks, this is probably why it's going to get resolved. So there's somebody out there that we all know saying that the strike could cost UPS 30% of diverted volume. So let's read a little bit here what's going on. UPS should be prepared to lose as much as 30% of diverted volume should the Teamsters strike the company by the end of the month. And the work stoppage lasts for a decent duration, a leading parcel consultant said Monday. UPS handled 18.6 million parcels in the U.S. per day in the first quarter. Under contingency plan, expects to handle 4 million parcels on its own. balance of about 14.6 million parcels, most of which would be ground deliveries, would be subject to diversion. Because there are 80,000 package car drivers and each driver delivers about 230 parcels per day, the diverted volume, if it never returns to UPS, could result in 4,300 lost driver jobs. Those of a few thousand package handlers for every 1 million packages diverted, he said. Now, how he knows that, I don't know, but that's what he said. Unlike the Teamster strike in 1997, there is plenty of competition for diverted volume. For example, FedEx, whose ground unit didn't exist back then, is delivering on-time performance for air and ground on par with UPS, according to Mr. Jindal. This will give shippers more confidence to keep diverted volumes with FedEx, he said. Now, notice that this will be true if these things start happening and if some of this volume starts coming over. It's not all going to go away, so keep that in mind. On Sunday, this is another development. On Sunday, the U.S. Postal Service launched Ground Advantage. Magically on Sunday, they announced this, with 2 to 5 day transit times comparable to FedEx and UPS. Dell envisioned a scenario in which large shippers divert lightweight parcels under 5 pounds that can fit in the mailbox to the Postal Service, and the heavier parcels to FedEx. Just what you wanted to hear, right? Potential damage to UPS and its unionized workers behooves both sides to return to the table and resume negotiations. Talks collapsed last week. No, and here's the thing, at least for now, and if it's true, this is trouble. No new talks are scheduled. So we'll see what happens.
Jeff, can I add to that?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. The one thing that they're struggling to come to terms on, as it says here, are the part-time wages. If they do significantly raise the part-time wages, FedEx will have to respond to that. Otherwise, they won't have any package handlers, or kind of less than what they have now. That will also affect you guys and girls out there, because if your package handlers in your building are getting more money, your drivers are going to expect more money. So then that might be time to look at a renegotiation, but it's also time to make sure that you have the right people in your business and that they can maximize their earning potential with you, rather than just give money away. How can they maximize their earning potential? Of course, they can deliver more packages and stops. So, but be aware of that right now the sticking part is part-time wages, and that will affect the package handler wages in your buildings as well.
Okay. So as always, stay tuned, because things are going to change quickly. And it could be, again, just keep in mind, it could be magically, it could all go away. But right now, based on where we've been, we've seen however many number of these situations. This one's different. I'll tell you that. See what happens. So Ken's going to talk about some more things here, and we've said this probably for 2 or 3 weeks now. And if you haven't gone through this exercise, absolutely fine. Make yourself some time to do this right now. You need to check out what you think your current capacity is and where your thresholds are at. So how would somebody do that, Mr. Ken?
Yeah, keep in mind, as Jeff said, FedEx drew a line in the sand, not only starting new shippers next week, at the end of next week, you're on or you're done. They're also establishing the capacity or kind of the quota of what a shipper can ship. So say a shipper this week is shipping 100 parcels per day or packages per day, and they go to 200 next week, that is going to be their allotment. They are going to be allowed to ship 200 packages if there is a UPS strike. So a smart traffic manager will divert as much volume from UPS to FedEx next week as possible to save their job and their company in a lot of cases in order to get boxes out. So that is why you need to understand what your capacity is now, because you're not going to get on a driver hired within a week. And everybody knows if you're not hiring every day, you're not going to have bodies to do this. So what can you do to maximize the space on your trucks, to maximize your employees' hours? How many stops can we absorb in our operation? You got to know these things. Okay. So we've gone through this a couple times. Just to re-hit it, or to hit this thing one more time, this capacity calculator in our system is absolutely critical. And I focused on one part last week. I'm going to focus on the improved productivity that you should also get. So once again, most people have their drivers on hours less than 7 hours, trying to get to 9.25. Okay. If they're currently doing 12 or 11 stops per hour, what if you gain 1 stop per hour? Okay. Now all of a sudden you're doing 108 stops per driver day. What happens? And you go to a 5% increase. Boom. Now your drivers still only on the road less than 7.5 hours. Okay. What if we go to 13 stops per hour? Your on-road hours go down. You're adding 71 stops. Your on-road hours go down with productivity gains. So again, we're going to jump all the way up to 15 stops per, or 15%. Quite frankly, if you grow 15%, your driver's productivity should increase half of that. So at a minimum, 7% productivity gain. So say we go from 12 stops per hour times 1.07. Guess what? Our driver should easily hit this 13 stops per hour. Okay, just by this gain. Now all of a sudden, you still have your drivers on the road less than 9 hours, just over 8.25 hours. If you're in California, you'd say, well, I got to pay overtime for anybody over 8. Can you switch them to a 4x10 week? And that might benefit you. So if you do that in California, you go to 4x10s, and that is their schedule. You don't pay overtime until they go over 40 hours or they work that 5th day. So you've got to know this capacity. It's absolutely critical that you do this now. If you are a subscriber, please use this tool. If you're a subscriber and you're not sure how to use this tool or where to get these inputs, all these inputs are available in the system. Really quick way to get them. If I go to this little tool here called the Op Metrics, if I want to see what happened, I want my most recent month to make sure I've got accurate data. I can do that. And what do you get? You get your revenue per dispatch, because you got to know that. You get your number of dispatches per day. You get your stops per dispatch. Oh, and you get your on-road hours. So all of these tools are available in the eTruckBiz system if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, I definitely encourage you to sign up for the free trial. You would have access to this data during the free trial here. You have access to the calculators. Actually talked with a person yesterday who's going to be taking over a business. They wanted to know how many stops per dispatch they were going to need. They wanted to know what their calculator, what their capacity was. What did he do? He came here. He used this golden rule calculator. So once again, if your drivers start, if there is a UPS walkout and your drivers come to you and say, hey, I want more money. Okay. What can you do? If you're paying $20 per hour, you're $3.50 per stop. Guess what? I need 118 stops per dispatch. Just some of the basics to really help you understand your operation, the power of X. This is going to show you, how much more you can generate based off of your stops per hour producing. So all of these calculators tie together, but let's start first by seeing what your capacity is in your operation and maximizing that capacity. Still going to encourage you to recruit. Always think you should be recruiting. If you hire somebody, can they replace one of your poor performers? I've yet to talk to a CSP that has 10 drivers and all 10 drivers are the greatest thing since sliced bread. Maybe, I actually talked to one CSP this week who hasn't had to hire anybody in a year and a half. That's fantastic. But he's constantly right-sized his operation. Always be recruiting. If you hire, use them to replace your weaker performers. But know your capacity, know what you can spend. And I think those are some of the best things that you can do with your operation. Jeff or Bob, anything to add to that?
Yeah, hey, I got something. This is Bob, everybody. I work with the DRO, do a lot in the DRO, and work with dynamic anchors and everything right now. But I would start logging at night your DRO, what it says you have for stops. We all know it's off, but start logging by day, how much you're getting, how much DRO is saying you're going to get. Then when brownout comes, if and when it comes, then you log that and figure out what % higher that is than what the DRO is saying. And then you take that % and add it into your trend volume. That way it should give you a pretty good idea. Because right now there's a lot of unknowns. How much are you actually going to get? How much is going to come? But putting those numbers together will help. And also, don't wait to fix your DRO if it's not right. Don't wait to fix it then. Do it now. Give us a call.
Strongly
And that's
encourage
all I
it.
got.
Jeff, anything?
Well, it's getting close to the time. I mean, again, nothing could happen. Nothing could happen. But if it does, and you haven't taken any steps yet to do anything, if you haven't increased your recruiting, and that's the thing to do right now, is to increase recruiting. We're not saying to hire people yet, but if it would be worth it right now to up your recruiting today, because if something happens, you can forget it. Everything, you'll easily be able to see which operations are already running good, which operations have prepared for this, even though your business partner is basically ignoring it. You'll be able to see real quick who's going to benefit from this. Or, I mean, I don't want to say this, but just think of this. If you start throwing all kinds of things that you don't care how much it costs at this, because FedEx is giving you a hard time about leaving packages on the floor, I hate to say it, but this is going to put some folks out of business as well. So it's not too late, but you better start thinking about some things here. Recruiting for sure, and being very familiar with your capacity. And I don't know if Ken, you talked about this yet, but you also need to think about where your thresholds are at.
Yeah,
Remember
that
the
daily
right to
stop.
decline.
Yeah, because you have contractual obligations to that daily stop threshold. That's it is a contractual obligation, whether you have enough people to do it or not. doesn't matter, it's a contractual obligation. Do I agree with it? Probably not, because they are so inflated, but if somebody fails in your building, they can push you into that area to help you cover it up to your daily stop threshold. Now, you can refuse anything over your daily stop threshold, but you can be forced to deliver up to your daily stop threshold. So that's where understanding your capacity without putting on extra people becomes important, and being able to communicate with FedEx what your capacity is. So in this operation, I mean, he's now can go up to, up to 150 stops per driver day. He's going to be able to pick up 200 stops without adding another driver. Could he go 20%? According to this, yep. So now he's up to 120 stops per dispatch. Once again, that's with no productivity gains per se. That's staying at 11 stops per hour. And quite frankly, he should get 12 stops per hour easily with that increase. Okay. So, and if that now all of a sudden, you've increased capacity even more.